Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Power of Knowing Forums, the Regenesis Talks, LinkedIn Live episode 140, 164. And we are celebrating our 50th episode of the Regenesis Talks today. And to have the discussion on the topic of Reimagine 50 years vision of future managers' value and growth with Regenesis. We have the honor of having Mr. Thomas Welsh, Rajiv, Bajaj, and Sunil on discussing on this topic. Without further ado, bringing the team on to the dais. Hi Rajiv, hi
You.
Thomas, hi
Prem.
Sunil.
Hi, Prem.
Hi,
Prem.
thank you, Prem.
Over to you, Thomas.
Okay, I think you're up first today, aren't you, Prem?
Yes, I would like to start. So, welcome to our podcast today. We are running at the 50th episode of the Regenesis Talk as I started the conversation today. It's a pivotal moment for us. Thomas, today we are talking about where we are right now and why, frankly, it should be terrified anyone who's not paying attention. But before we get into that solution, we have to understand the full scope of the problem and what exactly are we standing and what if we fail to act. That recognizing the urgency is the point that we're talking about. Thomas, over to you, Thomas.
Thank you, Prem. We are indeed at a crossroads. We're looking at a world where, well, we're pretty sure now that economic growth is slowing. Inequality is very likely deepening as far as we can see. Climate change is driving more extreme disruptions, and social unrest is bubbling under the surface, and political instability all around the world is threatening the global order. If we do nothing, these pressures won't just simmer, they'll explode, causing massive economic disruptions and profound loss of trust in institutions. And make no mistake, no one will be untouched, from the wealthiest investors to the everyday worker. Even in India, with its fabulous growth, could be affected. But also because of the unique and more holistic approach taken by Indian organizations, it is also, I think, the biggest hope for the world to go forward. And I think the role of managers and business owners and executives and directors throughout the country need to help themselves and help each other and help people in other countries come to a brighter hope. And it's why we're focusing our attention on and publishing these special episodes first here in India. And it hasn't escaped me that we're also on the eve of Diwali. And what better time could we have to bring a brighter, better idea into the world than these couple of days? So, with that said, Sunil, do you want to start us off with a question and a subject, please?
Yes, Thomas. First of all, thank you very much for putting this a strong line regarding India, that Indian organization is the brightest hope for the world. Thank you very much. My question to you is, what is the need for this change? What are the key drivers behind this, Thomas? And why should every business leader, government officials, and even the wealthy person should be paying the attention for this? Can you little bit elaborate on this?
Sunil, thank you. The symptoms are just everywhere, as far as I can see. Shrinking consumer bases mean businesses will soon face crises of demand. Climate risks threaten not just the environment, but the very foundation of industries. And as automation advances, millions risk being left behind, creating a deep divide between those who adapt and those who don't. The wealthy may believe they're completely insulated, but if they're facing a world where inequality leads to volatility even their resources can't shield them from, then these are not too distant threats. We could say, oh yes, it's 15, 20 years ahead, but I'm not sure the seeds of the problem will be that far away. And they're impacting markets and social stability, and they'll accelerate if we stay on this path, as far as I can see. And I think a pivotal role of managers and executives and directors and every other variation of that role, the business owners, all of us working together, we have to come to a better idea of what good looks like and what progress looks like. So, as far as I can see, my concern is I don't know that it'll go like this, but there is a kind of potential dystopian road ahead. Declining population prosperity affects wealth accumulation. There's no doubt about it. So, a shrinking consumer base as the middle class shrinks and the broader population struggles with declining real wages, debt burdens, and reduced purchasing power. Consumer demand for goods and services is, well, it looks like it could well decline despite our best efforts and working really hard. Market saturation and economic stagnation with fewer consumers able to afford products, even higher margin luxury goods, eventually face limits. So political instability, social unrest, economic disenfranchisement can fuel social and political instability. And erosion of asset values in extreme cases, if economic disparities become as so pronounced that they destabilize financial systems, even asset prices, stocks and real estate can suffer as fewer people have the wealth to invest. So pretty scary opening here there. And maybe, I guess, when you look ahead, if you look at extrapolating forward, and we spent quite a bit of our time thinking about, okay, what's the less good scenario that waits us? Where's the Regenesis team? All of us have spent time thinking about 5 to 10 years, probably going to give rise to more early symptoms and warnings. The next decade in particular may show more pronounced symptoms of this economic strain. 10 to 20 years out, if we don't pull up, if we don't change course, acceleration of consequences. Over this period, the full impact of a shrinking middle class may start to manifest. 20 to 30 years out, potential systemic breakdown if trends continue without substantial interventions. It's not like the world doesn't know what to do, but somehow we don't quite, as yet, get it done. So the ultimate catalyst for change, as far as we can see, will it be wealth collapse or something else? We don't really know. Economic crisis from systemic instability, a financial crisis triggered by unsustainable debt levels, overlapping markets, over leveraged markets, or massive social spending needs might create a moment of real reckoning. We don't know. Environmental catastrophe? Maybe. Climate change related disasters could force a rethink of economic priorities, especially if they are disrupting supply chains or agricultural production and even urban areas, or maybe geopolitical shifts. As economic power shifts to emerging markets or new global players, traditional economic powers may face strategic pressures to adapt. And then, of course, mass mobilization and social movements, large-scale social movements demanding greater equity, transparency, and sustainability could force governments and businesses to adapt reforms much earlier. So I think that's approximately what's been on our minds. And I'm sure you as listeners will have a lot of other things swirling around in your minds as well that we are right to be concerned about. And I think the role of us as managers is pivotal. Sunil. I think it's over to you, Sunil.
Okay, I'm sorry, Thomas. I'm sorry. So you have beautifully explained the ultimate catalyst for change, and what I'm hearing is, though the collapse of wealth is unlikely to be the first and most direct catalyst for change. However, the threat of wealth devaluation could drive elite and corporate interests to embrace reforms more rapidly. I'd like to request Rajiv ji to talk regarding the time frame for the potential unraveling of this on this issue.
Thank you, Sunil. I think this is the most important aspect, the time frame for potential unraveling. What does future look like? And if we don't face these realities, more importantly, if we do. So, Thomas, this is something we are very eager to hear from you. That what is your perspective on this point?
Sure, sure. And as you know, as we've been talking about, if we ignore these signs, I think the future could be a bit bleak here. It's certainly very worrying to us at Regenesis. Economic collapse, mass unemployment, social instability, we've all heard these things bandied around, but what if they're actually real? But if we act now, we can build a future that's much more resilient. We, as managers, executives, and directors, we have a role here where businesses can become much more sustainable, where growth is driven by innovation and inclusion. We could see a world where companies use technology not just to cut costs, but to create new opportunities for workers, where governments and businesses work together to solve global challenges, and where prosperity is not limited to a few, but accessible to all. And of course, nowhere do we see more advances in these areas than in India. There's so many businesses, not all by any means, but there's so many businesses there working hard at these kind of ideas and trying to take them forward and build them up. I guess in the short term, intensifying pressures, employee expectations, these are things we need to be mindful of. Issues like burnout, disengagement, demands for flexibility are already manifesting, leading to almost a great resignation or a great kind of drop back from the world of work, and making talent retention a critical challenge. And even in India, particularly there, because of the demands and the growth that's taking place. And even if organizations adapt quickly, it may not still be enough to retain their workforce and attract top talent. This is a new and emerging problem. Regulatory changes with increasing global regulations on climate action, corporate governance. Companies have a short window to adapt their practices. Those that lag may face fines or be excluded from certain markets. And then we've also got consumer behavior. The shift towards purpose-driven purchasing decisions is accelerating. Brands that fail to build trust and align with consumer values risk losing market share very rapidly. And back to the medium term, the deepening crisis, economic inequality, climate-related disruptions, and even the evolution of leadership. The pressure on leadership to change will continue to grow as younger generations move into more management roles and demand more adaptive and empathetic leadership styles. These are all important features of the landscape. And then as we get to the long term, I think this is when almost the fruits of our current labors kind of start to affect our lives. Widespread automation. In 15 to 50 years, automation will transform most industries. And we must make sure we don't lose the world of work to mankind, because obviously work and challenge and achievement, they're all central to our health and well-being. So we can't allow the pendulum of automation to sweep away too many, what some might regard as unnecessary jobs. But sometimes the little jobs are what people who are at this moment able to do less, that's what they're looking for. So if we sweep them all away, we're going to make a very two-tier world. And also, I think we're going to see increasingly resource scarcity and climate action. As natural resources become scarcer, companies will face existential challenges unless they adopt regenerative, recirculating, recycling practices. This will force a rethink of lots of the supply chains, production processes, overall business models. They were all going to need thinking about. And of course, this is all the work of the people we're supporting the best we can, which is managers, executives, and directors, and all of those involved in running our businesses and public service organizations. And then finally, redefining corporate purpose, the shift towards stakeholder capitalism. It's already started. This will reach maturity, and organizations that do not adopt a purpose-driven rather than a kind of financially driven approach, much more socially responsible approach, may be sidelined by more forward-thinking competitors. This fundamental shift will require a massive, almost complete transformation in the way we manage and lead and performers, executives, and directors, and the whole company corporate governance agenda is shifting massively. Rajiv, this is kind of in your domain. What do you make of it?
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. This is very powerful, the sharing which you actually shared the information that the convergence of these drivers and symptoms seem very clearly to mean that in the next few years, they are going to be very critical for managers and organizations to adapt because lots of changes will happen simultaneously, and how the organizations react to it and how they manage this change is going to be very, very critical for them. So the changes are not only inevitable but are accelerating rapidly. Lots of new things are happening around us. So, organizations that invest in adaptability, resilience, and purpose driven approach today will be better positioned to navigate these shifts and thrive in the transformed future. So there are no shortcuts. So all these factors are going to be very, very powerful, and they are going to affect and impact the organizations in a big way. So Regenesis can play a pivotal role in guiding this transition. We can help leaders embrace change, rethink their strategies, and build businesses that are resilient, innovative, and aligned with evolving needs of the world. So do stay tuned into Regenesis, and that is why we keep on encouraging you guys to join our movement, to join us in this very strong system which we are, trying to share with you, and definitely that can be very transformative for your organization. So Sunilji,
Yes,
we
Rajivji,
look
I
forward
think
to.
you have explained it very clearly that how Regenesis can play a very very important role in this changing world, and that will be helpful for the new leaders and business managers. Thomas, as we wrap up today's session, you have laid out some pretty sobering realities for those who might be thinking they still have time to address these challenges. What would you say to them?
Well, I think we do still have some time, luckily, fortunately. But to put it bluntly, time is now not on our side. The terrors we've discussed today, and I do think some of them are quite terrifying, shrinking markets, social unrest, environmental disasters, they are all distant, they aren't distant, and they are potent possibilities. They're lurking what feels like just around the corner, and they'll strike harder and faster than most of us or any of us are prepared for. Businesses that fail to adapt and join the effort to create a better future, to build a better world, to build a more settled, healed world, then could find themselves irrelevant in just a few years, swept away by a wave of economic and social upheaval. Governments could face crises they can no longer control. And for the wealthy, well, as I said at the beginning, I don't know anymore that this is entirely still a safe haven. Economic collapse doesn't discriminate. If you take away the bottom of the economic pyramid, then there's nothing to kind of feed the resources up to the top. So that must collapse too, or certainly must get greatly diminished. Um, well, yeah, the price of doing nothing is probably pretty catastrophic. And I'm sure there is a lot going on, but it doesn't feel like much of it's pulling together very well at the moment. We've even got countries, tending towards war and fighting each other rather than getting on and doing what needs to be done at this crucial time for the world. But for those who act now, the opportunities are immense. And episode 2 is where we'll be sharing how you can be among those who don't just survive the shift, but also thrive in the face of this. Back to you, Rajiv.
Yeah, Thomas, it sounds like you are saying that what's at stake is just isn't just prosperity but survival itself. So that's very critical. So for anyone who thinks they can wait this out, what's your message? Because I think they need to know that what is going to happen, and I think they need more clarity on this subject. Thomas.
Absolutely. And I think, certainly in the opinion of us here at Regenesis, waiting doesn't seem to be just risky unless we get our act together. And that's why we do what we do. We believe that's actually quite reckless. Every day of inaction and non collaboration is another step closer to the brink. And personally, I'm already close enough where at the brink, the collapse becomes irreversible. But for those of us who are ready to take action, well, let's get together, let's work together, let's dive into the practical steps. We'll be looking at that in episode 2. So miss it and you miss the roadmap. We've spent a lot of time between us all to prepare the roadmap, to navigate what's coming. Don't just come to listen, come to prepare yourself for what could be the most pivotal shift in our lifetime. So this time next week, here on the Regenesis Talks, please come here. We believe it's important. This isn't just another discussion. Episode 2 will show you how to turn today's threats into tomorrow's, probably the greatest opportunities. If you're ready to act, I hope to see you there. But I can promise you, it'll be easy to hear. It'll be easy to bear. What we're actually going to talk about in part 2 next week is, well, things like holistic, purpose-driven management and leadership, from crude profit to prosperous purpose. That kind of shift needs to take place. Stewardship over control. We're going to talk about radical collaboration and fluid organization structures, maybe networked organizations, maybe global and borderless management. We're also going to talk about technologically augmented management, AI as a co-manager, automation of routine tasks. We're going to talk about those things, of course, but it's not all there is. There needs to be hyper-adaptable and resilient organizations, resilience as a core competency, to be flexible, to focus on continuous learning and development, because it's coming ever faster. We always think we've reached the peak of learning, but nope, it still goes faster. It still becomes more. Blending human and digital workforces. How does that work? How do we make sure that the control stays with the humans and that the resources, the technological resources, assist the humans be better rather than the other way around? So this cohesion between human and machine intelligences and capabilities, how do we bring that together in a way that leaves the humans still in the charge of the situations, yet guided and maybe educated as well as we can using the technology? Ethical leadership in a tech-driven world, I suppose we're talking about. We're looking at well-being and mental health as a strategic priority. We can't take all the work away, at least as far as we know, because we don't know how to be healthy without meaningful labor. We don't know how to do it without challenge. We lose our intelligence unless we are overcoming, using our brains to overcome and learn and deal with our world that we're in. These are all vitally important things. And sustainability and regenerative business models, regenerative approaches, stakeholder capitalism, very different to what we're in now, and rethinking value creation and ownership models. All big stuff, And we're going to talk about all this next week, and a more human-centered approach to innovation, empathy-driven innovation, diversity as an innovation driver. These are really, really big subjects. And then finally, maybe we even get into, ultimately, we are going to have to get into navigating new social contracts, redefining the employer-employee relationship, social responsibility as a competitive edge. There is so much there for us to look at. So do come next week. We think it's going to be a really lively, important session. We can't wait to see you there. Rajiv.
Yeah, Thomas, I think you said it right. And it's going to be a very, very powerful session next week. So, in summary, the next 50 years will demand a profound transformation in the way managers lead the organizations and how they operate flexibly with empathy and a commitment to positive impact will be the essential trait for the managers. It's not going to be easy. We are all going to see lots of transformation happening in the management practices. So those who embrace technological changes and while keeping people at the heart of their strategies will thrive, creating an enduring value in a complex, fast evolving world. Those who will not, they will definitely have a struggle. So that's where we can come in. That's where Regenesis can actually guide you how to manage that struggle with the perfect symphony, so that you don't have to, feel that inertia of kind of a breakdown situation. So do follow us and do make sure that you are there next week as well, so that you can understand what we have to talk about. And thank you, Thomas, for a very powerful session today, also to make all of us aware how are things going to be emerging. So over to you, Prem.
Okay, before we dive out, I just want to say thank you, Rajiv. That was a really good summary. And I think it's important to say we certainly don't know it all, but we know we've got some important things to add in. We've done some work which we know will make at least some of the path ahead much easier, and that's by simplifying and making management much more impactful and easier to adapt than perhaps it would be if it was much bigger. So I've said some strange things there, but I think these are really important assets that we'll be talking about next week. And before we dive out, I just want to bring in Sunil. Is there anything else that I've missed, Sunil, that you want to say before we hand over to Prem?
I think, Thomas, you and Rajiv had put all the points. The fact is that India is an emerging market, and this is a time when leader has to change himself. There are a lot of a scope of improvement, and as you have rightly said, Regenesis is going to play a very, very important role. So I will just request that we are on a mission. Please join us and take the advantage of this. Over to Prem.
Thank you, Thomas, Rajiv, Sunil, and everyone listening today. If you have felt even a hint of uncertainty about the future, that's where we are bringing a continuation episode that is going to be our continuation episode of the 50th episode, which we are going to cover. It is not optional, but it is essential. Don't be the one who looks back and regrets not acting. We will see you soon. Trust me. You don't want to miss this out. With this, we would like to conclude our session, and we have our session coming up next week at same time, 6:30 p.m. IST. Looking forward to have you here on the show. Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you, Sunil. Thank you, everyone, for being part of the show today. It's been a great.
Thanks
Thank you,
everyone,
Prem.
and happy Diwali to everyone. Yeah.
And the same to you.
Happy Diwali to everyone. Have a safe Diwali, and looking forward to see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very
Okay.
much.